Welcome into the Merrifield Sportsbook Show. It is week 5 of the college football season. It's the last week of September, which means it's everybody's favorite time of the season. It's September Heisman season, the Denard Robinson Award, whatever you want to call it. The Michigan quarterback slightly plays above average award, as it has been the past few years, but that's neither here nor there. We'll get into that a little bit later. We are here with, the usual guests. You know them by now. It is Justin Walsh, it is Jay DeCoster, and it is Matt Merrifield. I'll start with you, Jay Walsh. I know you are heavily in the middle of a wild card race with the Tigers right now. I know you're quite enjoying that. How has the week been since we last convened?
It has been it's been a solid week. As you pointed out, the Tigers are extremely back. Currently in the midst of a pretty decent route of the Mr. Merrifield's beloved Rays right now. Again, my condolences. But looking to clinch, and then obviously had a good week with the parlay last week. But chicken shit Lincoln Riley cost me the parlay by not being able to stop the run, even though Michigan couldn't throw a pass more than 2 yards down the field. But that's neither here nor there. So we got back on track on the overall record. Got my first lock of the week hit, and we are looking forward to next week. Let's keep it going.
Jay, last week you took Syracuse as your lock. You saw me shaking my head, and I have narratives about Syracuse. And I hated that pick. And guess what? I was right. So, Jay, I just wanted to say I was right. Jay, how have you been?
Yes, you were right. That was a disaster. I don't know. To be honest with you, I'll be honest with you, I was at work. I was on my lunch break, and I kind of scrambled through, and I just looked at Syracuse and be like, you know what? They're at the Carrier Dome. That did not work. I will never be picking a former Big East team again because they suck, and Kyle McCord sucks. And I remember watching that pick six live and like, okay, you get out of here. So overall, it's been all right. So we're getting there. So
Matt, you had an easy cover last week with Miami. Parlay didn't do so well. It was good, it wasn't great. But how have you been since last week?
Yeah, it wasn't the best week in terms of parlays. I went 3-3 again. Shout out USC for not having a run defense when it matters most, which is fine. I don't remember my picks from last week. Gotta be honest. I shout out my roommates being extra loud when I'm trying to talk as they prepare for the bar. But wish that was me right now. But shout out Wyoming for sucking ass. They are the worst team potentially in Power 5 or all of college football. Excuse me, maybe with Kent State. And that's all I got. So let's make some picks.
I love that mindset. But before we get into the picks, we had some wild shenanigans happen. We are recording on Wednesday. This happened overnight last night. And no, it was not Utah State joining the Pac-12. It does have to deal with a Mountain West team, and that is UNLV. This situation it came out of nowhere, and I don't really know the words to put to it, but just a quick backstory to it. Matt Sluka, the starting quarterback for UNLV, he at 12:30 a.m. Eastern time last night. So that's 9:30 in Vegas. He announces he's using his red shirt this year and opting out for the rest of the year because basically he's saying he hasn't been paid the NIL money that he was promised and other promises of money that he was told when he was transferring from Holy Cross last year. Of course, UNLV and the NIL collective have denied it, saying that, it's more on his side that things didn't get done. Now you got agents coming into it. It's become a complete mess here. And it feels like it's a first of who knows how many are coming soon. Me and Jay Walsh were talking prior to the show. my standpoint on this, I'm surprised this didn't happen sooner. We are in a world of college football where there are no rules. And I think this is just a consequence of that. You don't have really any governing body doing anything. The NCAA is useless. And you just are letting people have free reign. I think there's a lot of problems here, both sides of it. And it's just a mess. And like I said, I'm surprised it hasn't happened sooner. Jay Walsh, since we kind of had this conversation a little bit already, I'll start with you. Just kind of what were your thoughts coming out of this when you first saw this happening?
So obviously there's a lot to unpack here. And, as I said a little bit earlier, there are pretty much always three sides to a story. There's either one person's side, the other person's side, and then somewhere in the middle, there's the actual truth of what happened. So because we don't officially know exactly what's going on yet, it's really hard to kind of cast judgment. But if what Sluka is saying is true and that they basically promised him $100,000 to transfer from Holy Cross to UNLV, and they have basically turned around and said, no, we're not giving that to you. I think he's 100% in the right. I do kind of disagree with the way he's going about it. I wouldn't necessarily quit on your teammates and quit on the team, but I do agree that that would be a ridiculous transgression by the school. Now, the way that I see it, the timing is a little bit suspicious of if you were a quarterback that was promised $100,000 to transfer to a different school and they had not paid you that $100,000 yet or made efforts to get that happening, why would you play 3 games and then decide to make a big deal about it? So the way that it kind of looks is he saw the team get off to a 3-0 start and decided, hey, maybe I can get some more money out of this. Now, I'm not saying that that's what happened, but it's the way that it kind of looks. So I think it's kind of a combination of they probably offered him some stuff that they're not holding up their end, but he also probably saw that they started off 3-0 and he thought he could make a quick buck out of it. So that's kind of where I'm at on all this. Obviously, like I said, we don't know the truth yet, so we don't really know what's going on, but it's just kind of a clusterfuck of a situation.
Jay, we'll go to you next. Like Jay Walsh mentioned, I mean, UNLV is sitting at 3-0 right now. They've had that huge win against Kansas. It was 2 weeks ago. They had the week 1 win against Houston. Obviously, Houston hasn't looked good all season, but still, that's a win against a Power 5 opponent. Kind of what are your thoughts with this whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, if you're quitting on your team after you start off 3-0, that's one thing I disagree with. But I think it's just the world we live in now. Like with this NIL stuff, you're seeing. I mean, you saw this summer, Jaden Rashada from Florida sued the school. I believe it was like $500,000 because he wasn't promised that. I believe, if correct me if I'm wrong, he had to sue because like he wasn't promised like $500,000. It's just the world we live in now. It's like this is just a crazy time in college athletics. I think I think a lot of us were in favor of college athletes being paid, but I didn't think it would get to the level of extent it is. It's kind of out of control right now with the amount of players that are just like taking advantage of it. And I agree with Jay Walsh. I don't really understand why you decide, I'm just gonna bail when my team's 3-0. We can settle this later. I don't really understand that. It's just weird to me. It's the world. Like I said, it's how college athletics are now. There needs to be restrictions and there needs to be like boundaries. So.
And Matt, you texted me this morning. I think it's probably when you first saw what happened. You said, "Is CFB cooked?" Well, Matt, is CFB cooked?
Yeah, it appears to be cooked. I don't know if that was a overreaction. It probably was, but I think we've seen
Outstanding comments
Riveting
That's-
stuff from Matt there.
Bro was spitting. Bro was spitting.
Riveting right there.
Honestly, that was the best breakdown I've ever heard of this whole thing. I
You
mean,
know what else really needs to be said? Honestly,
truly. All right, so I also saw this tweet on X, Twitter, whatever. I don't care. From Trill Withers, because all great commentary comes from Trill Withers. And I honestly, I think it's the truth. He said, NIL is just drug deals gone wrong now. Who are you going to complain to? I mean, that it really sets in stone, one, that there is nobody to complain to because there's no rules around it. Like I said, the NCAA isn't doing anything. I don't know what the solution is either, because like I said, I'm surprised this hasn't happened sooner. I'll ask both of you, since we've lost Matt now due to internet troubles. I mean, this is gonna happen at some point at this year again, isn't it? Just with the way this is going.
I would be very surprised if it doesn't, and certainly if it doesn't happen this year, it will next year, and probably for the foreseeable future. Because basically the transfer portal has just turned into free agency at this point, and it's a sad day for college football as a sport. But the way that I look at it, and we're getting into I've shared this with people before, but I have it's not really a conspiracy theory, but I kind of have a feeling that this is going to happen at some point. I think the NCAA is going to give somebody the death penalty within the next couple of years for NIL violations. Because what I think is going to happen is, as we've talked about, it's kind of a lawless wasteland right now. It's basically the Wild West, no real rules in place, just kind of do whatever you want, basically. I think the NCAA is already realizing, or is going to realize, that they basically have no power at this point. And so what I think they're going to do to try to gain that power back is they're going to put NIL rules in place, and they're going to scapegoat one school and death penalty them to show that they still have the power to do something that actually affects these universities. Because for the most part, NCAA punishments don't really do anything. I mean, vacancies, nobody really respects vacancies at this point. Scholarship cuts, not really. Postseason bans are great, I guess, but I mean, really, none of these have done anything to curb cheating in the past. So I think what they're going to do is they're going to scapegoat one school and give them the death penalty to show that, hey, we still have the authority here. And so I think that is inevitably where this leads to.
Jay, I mean, I kind of agree with that point. I think we do end up getting somebody ending up with the death penalty. My only question is, does the NCAA have the balls to do it? I mean, the NCAA is basically powerless right now because they're just letting anybody do whatever they want. I mean, the last time we saw the death penalty was SMU, and SMU kind of was scapegoated because they were a smaller school, but everybody else was doing it, but SMU was the one that got caught.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with you guys. I think I can see that happening. And just to speak on like the Wild West part, here's an example. Michigan State pays said defensive tackle to come back to their school, pays them a lot of money. Now I'm going to go to Miami and get even more money. I think there needs to be a restriction on that. You get paid. There needs to be a restriction, like a contract. Like, hey, we paid you. Now you need to stay. You shouldn't just dip and go to another school that paid you more money. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but I mean, look, Michigan State's Simeon Barrow, by the way, and then they just lost him for Miami. Miami's just
not that we're naming names or anything, but
yeah, exactly. Miami, all they do is just pay players. I mean, their fund is insane. Their NIL fund, and Yeah, no, this is crazy what we're living in right now. Is with these schools having the amount of money they have and just dishing out money to these players. And if the school doesn't give this player this money, the player gets pissed, and then it's just everything turns into a clown show. There needs to be some sort of, there needs to be some sort of like tone, like contract here or something. We need to establish something that says, hey, like we need to settle this down, and maybe it can get out of control. Will it? Probably not, because the NCAA sucks basically. So there's really nothing like. No, who knows what the NCAA is going to do? But I don't think anything's happening anytime soon. So,
And then
kind of going back to what you were saying, Nick, about how you don't know that it's going to happen because the NCAA is so powerless. Like I said, I think that is the reason that they will do it, because obviously, like you said, the last time that they instituted the death penalty was against SMU in 1987, and they saw what it did to the SMU program, and basically they said, we're never doing that again, because there have been instances where it has possibly been warranted since then, but they've not done it because they saw that it basically destroyed the SMU program. But I think they are getting desperate enough at this point because they realize that their power is kind of fading away. I think they're getting desperate enough to get to the point where they will do it again.
And then one final question that I know the answer to on this before we move on. It feels like it doesn't. Does the actual education part of college even matter anymore? I mean, with all these transfers and all this stuff, it doesn't really matter, it seems, anymore.
Hey, these kids didn't come here to play school.
that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, no, I mean it's all about the money now. Like Miami dishing out all this money to these players. You name the school with the most amount of NIL funds. Education doesn't matter anymore. It's all about football. So, I mean, there's really it's all about money, and it's like you said, the Jay Walsh. It's the wild, wild west.
And that, I don't even know that the kind of lack of focus on education is necessarily even a direct result of NIL, because it kind of feels like that's what it was for a while before. Obviously the quote, didn't come here to play school, shout out Cardale Jones. But it feels like for the top dogs in college football, it feels like it's been that way for a while. Of, are they really even getting through these classes by themselves? I mean, are they really even doing the work? It's mostly just, you come here, play football for 3 years, and then go to the NFL. So, I mean, it really, the education aspect is lost, but I think that has kind of been that way for a while.
I mean, it really does feel like it's been a while, for education even mattering, it even going back pre, NIL and all that kind of stuff. So I figured we needed to open with that because, I mean, that is the biggest news of this college football weekend, I feel, other than probably one game, which seems much bigger than all the other ones. But I wanted to get that done. I want to move into another quick segment before we get to this week. It is time, we're at the end of September, which means we are at the September Heisman Awards ceremony. Of course, the September Heisman is for, the player that makes all the headlines in September and most likely is going to not win the Heisman in December. I mean, if we go back in time, I mean, like I keep mentioning, Denard Robinson, I think that was like 2010 or 2011. Like, he was just all the talk in September. You had Case Keenum up there when he was at Houston. I think you had Geno Smith and Tavon Austin. They were doing great things. Obviously, none of these players won the Heisman.
Shout out Tavon Austin with the greatest highlight reel of all time.
Exactly. Last year, I think it was a split, honestly, last year between Shedeur and Travis Hunter, just with the amount that Colorado was getting talked about last year. But it's time for us at the Merrifield Sportsbook to decide who our September Heismans are. So, Jay, I'm going to start with you. Who is your September Heisman for 2024?
don't think there's any doubt right now. It's Cam Ward at Miami. What he's doing, I picked my guys at Miami. They're playing pretty well right now. Looking good for that ACC title so far through September. ACC champion so far. Cam Ward, over 1,400 yards passing, 14 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. Been really good. And especially when you look at, Florida's not any good, but they're still a Power 5 team. He was at the Swamp. He played really well in that game. Played really well last week against South Florida. This dude's been worth every penny for what they paid for him in the transfer portal. By far, right now, the number one portal quarterback right now that Miami got. So I will be going with Cam Ward. I think you guys will be considering him as well because he's been awesome.
Yeah, I can officially confirm that was Matt Merrifield's September Heisman pick. He also had Cam Ward. So Jay Walsh, I'll go with you next. Who's your September Heisman for this year?
So I'm actually going to throw 3 names out here because I'm going to do 3 different categories in terms of one being the kind of moniker of September Heisman and the kind of tradition of being somebody who maybe kind of getting overhyped, definitely deserves it because they're obviously a great player, but maybe kind of overshadowing other players who deserve it. I think it's got to be Travis Hunter. I mean, he's a fantastic player. He's got over 400 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns through their first 4 games. I mean, he is a phenomenal player and obviously playing on both sides of the ball, playing basically every snap of every game. You have to put him in that consideration. And I think with the kind of media narratives in play about the Colorado team, I think he's definitely kind of the most fitting name for that September Heisman category. In terms of most deserving, I think it's definitely Cam Ward. I mean, Jay basically ran through it all. I mean, he has looked phenomenal to start the year, led Miami. They're looking like a juggernaut to start the year. I mean, through this point in the season, he is, in my mind, definitely the favorite to win the Heisman. So he is definitely the most deserving of the title of September Heisman. But one name I want to throw out there that not a lot of people are talking about, and it's because he's at a school that you don't necessarily traditionally associate with Heisman quality players. I want to throw Caleb Johnson, the running back from Iowa, in there. He has been absolutely on fire to start the season, rushing for over 150 yards in 3 of the team's first 4 games, scoring multiple touchdowns in every game they've played this year. He has been on an absolute tear to start the season. And if he continues at his current pace, he absolutely deserves to be in New York for that ceremony at the end of the year.
And I am also, for my September Heisman, came down to 2 players for me. But I am also going with a running back. But it is not from Iowa. It is from Idaho. I'm going with Ashton Jeanty. If he feels like the perfect type of September Heisman type player, like you're going to hear about him September because that's when Boise State plays teams like, Oregon, and they're going to be in the national headlines. Yes, they may be in a race for, a playoff spot come later in the year, but nobody's going to be talking about him in, November when, Boise State is playing San Diego State or San Jose State. I know they go on the island in a few weeks. Nobody's going to be talking about him then. He feels like the perfect type of September Heisman player. The other one, obviously, I was considering was Nico Iamaleava, but I honestly, I don't even think he's very good as a freshman. He's not Cam Ward. Cam Ward, it seems as of now, it seems like this is his Heisman to lose. Obviously, we have a long ways to go for that. But if Miami keeps playing at this level, he's at least a shoo-in to get to New York, if not win it all. I thought we should do that given that is the end of September, even though probably could have done it next week, but we'll get it over with now. Let's move into this week 5 of the college football season. We kept the card a little bit short on games we'll preview today there are still a ton of good games. I feel like some of us will get to it on our parlays, but there are a ton of good games on there. Let's start off with, though, it's technically an ACC battle, but also not really because Notre Dame is independent. But it is Louisville traveling to South Bend to face off against Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a 6.5-point favorite in this one. The over-under is 45.5. Jay Walsh, I will start with you on this one. Notre Dame struggled a little bit with Miami of Ohio, but I mean, they got things turned around, and I mean, they looked good by the fourth quarter of that game. This feels like their first real test since Texas A&M, which was week 1. For Louisville, it kind of feels like this is their first big test too. What are you expecting in this somewhat ACC matchup?
Yeah, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth in the fact that this is really kind of the first big test for both of these teams. I mean, Louisville played a competent Georgia Tech team last week, but it was a home matchup. You know, it's Georgia Tech is good, but they're not a great team. Notre Dame has the talent to be a potentially great team. So this is really a big test for them. And obviously traveling to South Bend is always a tough thing to do. On the flip side, Notre Dame, obviously they had the ridiculous loss at home to Northern Illinois. It was just an absolute disaster. But then they got the bounce back when they played Purdue the next week, beat them like 66-7 or something like that. And then they kind of shut down another MAC opponent, Miami, Ohio, last week. Really what I'm looking for in this game, I think this is going to be a defensive battle. If I had to pick in this game, I would say I would probably roll with Notre Dame simply because they're at home, although I don't necessarily love the 6.5-point spread there. I could see this easily being kind of a field goal game, but I would probably roll with Notre Dame here, and I would say the under is probably the play here at 45.5.
Jay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean,
I was gonna say the same thing, really. I mean, Notre Dame's just so confusing because they go to Texas A&M. Texas A&M's overrated. You lose to NIU, and then you just boat race Purdue. Purdue's bad, but that's a Big Ten team. They're just so confusing to me. Louisville's a good football team. I would probably lean Louisville to cover in this. I think Notre Dame will win, but I do think this was closer. I think 6.5 is just a little too many points in this spot. I can't trust Notre Dame right now, man. I think Notre Dame will pull it out at home. I just think that's just a lot of points for me. I mean, I just don't know what Notre Dame's going to come out. I mean, are we going to have the Notre Dame that Riley Leonard looks good, and he doesn't suck as a passer, and their defense is just elite? Or we're going to get the Notre Dame where their defense folds in critical situations and Riley Leonard turns the ball over. So I don't know what we're going to get. This is a tough game for me, but I would probably lean Louisville in the spot, and I agree with Jay Walsh. I'd probably lean the under as well. So,
and I kind of sit in the same boat as you, Jay. We don't know what Notre Dame team is going to show up this week. This does kind of feel like a game where you find out like what Notre Dame team is kind of going to show up in those big moments. Like, because if they just, sit out there and put out an egg, then, I mean, it's going to be the NIU game all over again. If they come out and play like they did against Texas A&M, I think they got a really good shot of not just winning, but covering this game. But it's just the question of what Notre Dame team are you going to get? And that worries me, which makes me lean towards Louisville here, but also Louisville not being really tested as much this year. Jay Walsh, as you mentioned, it was a competent, Georgia Tech team last week, but it was at home. This is on the road. It's a completely different environment. It's just, this is a tough one. I'll lean towards Louisville covering here, but Notre Dame winning. It was 45.5. it seems a little bit low. I think it barely goes over, but I mean, it could. I feel like it's like right on that line right there. So, given that, we'll move on to the second game that we have on this card, and it's the game nobody will be watching at 7:30 p.m. on Saturday night because this game is a Peacock exclusive game. And yes, it is 7:30 kickoff compared to the original announcement that it was a 7 o'clock kickoff. I don't know what happened there, but whatever. It is Ohio State traveling up to East Lansing to take on Michigan State. Ohio State, a 24 and a half point favorite in this one. The over-under is 48 and a half. Jay, we'll start with you. Let's take for both of you, we'll take a look back on last week first for the Michigan State Spartans. That was just a game that got away because of what feels like rookie mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Charles threw half of his picks, I think Michigan State wins that game. And also Nate Carter, I mean, you gotta catch the football, man. That was a touchdown, he just flat out dropped it. You gotta catch that, and in that situation, it happens, but I mean, you gotta make that play. But anyways, I don't know. Aiden Childs is showing why he's 19 years old. I mean, he's got the arm talent, man, but it's just he's got to work on his accuracy, man, and his decision making has to be better. He's a prolific athlete. I think what you saw on Saturday night is this guy has the potential to be really, really good in the Big Ten for a couple of years. And then you also see that this is technically his freshman year because he only played 3 games for Oregon State last year. He needs to work on his accuracy, and Michigan State their defense is promising. I think Chris Bogles has shown that a huge leap compared to last year. The secondary is much better. The linebacking core is solid. Jordan Hall is a phenomenal football player in year 2 already. I just think, you got to find a way to close games, and Michigan State should have won that football game. I mean, Thomas Castellanos wasn't beating you with his arm, and just one play like that, one of the safeties slips, and then next thing you know, they're in the end zone. Just stuff like that can't happen. Michigan State played well enough to win that game, and they just couldn't close. So, in terms of for this game, I mean, 23 and a half. Ohio State's out for blood this year. I mean, Michigan State hasn't shown that they can keep it close within 40 points of these guys. So until proven otherwise, I will be taking Ohio State minus the 23 and a half. Over under, I'd probably lean the over because I think Aiden Childs can make some good enough plays in this and for garbage time or even in the first half to make this, to get the score up, I guess. But I probably lean Ohio State just because, look, they're the better football team. Caleb Downs is, like I said before the show, he is licking his chops for this game. I mean, this guy is going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL, and he's going to be causing some issues on Saturday night. So until proven otherwise, I will be taking Ohio State. So,
and Jay Walsh, I believe it was you that tweeted it on Saturday night right after that Nate Carter drop. I think you said something along the lines of, "I'm sure that's not going to backfire on us or anything." And then literally 5 minutes later, you replied after Boston College scored, "Well, there it is," or something along those lines.
That was the rough. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah. That game, it should have been a win, but it slipped away. Felt like because of those mistakes.
Yeah, and I knew it was going to happen at some point. I had been telling people all year long heading into this year that they were going to have at least one game this season that they should have won, that they were going to throw away because of young freshman mistakes. And it was unfortunate that it happened to be this one, but it was, I mean, anyone who watched that game without a violent Boston College bias saw that Michigan State was the better team in that game. They turned the ball over. Obviously, Childs with the 3 interceptions. They fumbled the opening kickoff of the second half. They had Childs miss at least 3 wide open walk-in touchdowns. Obviously, Carter with the drop at the end. I mean, I could keep going on about all the mistakes that they made in that game, and they still had a chance to win it. So it's just, I knew it was going to happen at some point. I'm not necessarily losing faith in the team because obviously they're young, they're going to make mistakes, but the talent is there. And that kind of leads me into my prediction for this week's game. I am taking Michigan State to cover the 24.5 because I think that this is a classic game that they turn around from and play some of their best football. I think Aiden Childs is one of the, at least at the beginning of his career, is going to be one of those guys that kind of raises and lowers his level based on who they're going up against. And it's hard to play against anybody better than Ohio State. So I think this is a classic game where he's going to come out and he might throw an interception or two, but I think he's going to go over 300 yards on the day. And I think he's going to throw at least 3 touchdowns. And I think if that were to happen, I think Michigan State's defense is good enough to hold Ohio State below like the 50 points per game that we've been allowing them the last 6 years. And I think Michigan State covers in this game. Because I think Michigan State covers, I also think the over hits because I don't think Michigan State covers without scoring at least 25 points in this game. So I am taking Michigan State to cover in this game, and I'm taking the over. And I think a lot of people are going to be relatively surprised based on how the team looked last week. But I think everyone kind of knows that the potential is there for Childs and this offense to be a borderline elite offense. They just need to cut down on the mistakes. And I think they'll kind of go a long way of doing that this week.
Yeah, I mean, cutting down on the mistakes feels like it is the biggest factor in this Michigan State team getting better because I think we're seeing a slow progression, like to, the casual. They're going to say, hey, like he's been doing this for 3-4 weeks now, but then like you can point right at the Maryland game, but it led to a victory. Jay Welsh, I want to get on board with you with Michigan State covering this game. This Ohio State team seems so good. We obviously they've played, I believe, 2 MAC teams and a Sun Belt team so far, so they have not faced off against any major competition. But I think for Michigan State, because what I have noticed with Ohio State, they start games really slow. If Michigan State can jump on that and get, like, I'm not even talking like a huge lead. If you can just like get up like 10-0 or something like that early on, I think that changes the dynamics of this game. I still think it ends up with Ohio State scoring, 30 or 40 in this game and Michigan State losing. But I think there's a better chance that Michigan State wins this week after losing last week than it would be if the opposite happened and Michigan State won last week. I think this loss actually helps Michigan State in the long run. I kind of like Jay Walsh said, you knew that this game was going to come eventually where, we lose because of mistakes. It feels like getting that loss out of the system. Now, the schedule does not get any easier from here, but getting that loss kind of out of the system it feels like it changes some like things around for this team. I still like Ohio State to cover. Like I said, I want to be on the train with you, Jay Walsh. I just think this Ohio State team is so much better. But given that it's East Lansing, it's at night, I'm sure the students will be drinking responsibly throughout the day because that is what the Spartans do. It is Spartans' will that you drink responsibly.
Yeah, unfortunately, we did lose our only current student at the that will be at the game that could give us an insight on the drinking responsibly aspect of being a student at MSU currently, but I digress.
I can actually, Jay, I'll give you the floor in 1 second, but I do have to mention this. Our current student actually will not be at the game on Saturday. He will be working the Flint Firebirds game on Saturday. So he will not be in attendance for most likely an Ohio State victory. Jay, I give the floor to you finally.
Well, that's a good decision by Matt. Because I will be the only one at the game drinking responsibly, as Spartans will drink responsibly, sure. With new alcohol sales in the stadium, sure. But I mean, if you want me to make some noise and help the team, I will. But there's just no way that's gonna help at all, because, like I said, Ohio State's they're just gonna blow the doors off this team. I mean, sure, East Lansing at night. I mean, what did Michigan do to this team last year? 48-0 or whatever it was, 49-0. East Lansing at night, sure. I mean, it's not going to be Georgia, Alabama level of intensity. So
now, JDC, I do want to ask, night game against Ohio State, late September, will we be having a Melting Moments ice cream sandwich at the game?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I might just get 2 of those, honestly. I haven't had one in like a year.
I love it.
So good.
I love it.
It is delicious. The best dessert you can ask for. That and a Spartan Stadium hot dog.
Yeah.
With no condiment.
Okay, you lost me on that one.
Jay, honestly, I think the game plan for you, just yell "make plays" enough times, and Michigan State will make plays.
Maybe the student section will be empty, and then maybe I can just wander over to the infamous Nick Burt student section spot that is just legendary.
Last row, seat 13, the only seat 13, I think, in that like whole section, because of the way the stadium goes up, it gradually goes up by number. I've noticed that's the only 13 seat in that section, which could very much be bad luck. And maybe I've just that's the reason why Mel Tucker happened, is because I sat in that 13 seat for all those years. Who knows? But honestly, Michigan State just got to make plays in this game. Make plays.
Yeah,
I'll be yelling that all night. What are you saying, Jay Walsh?
Jay, I need you to have the same loss of voice as the infamous Mike Valeni rant when you're on the pod next week. I need it. I absolutely need a Valenti-esque Jay DeCoster hoarse voice rant on next week's pod.
Well, maybe we'll be choking on applesauce. So who knows what will be going on. We just need to make so many plays, and then we'll see what happens. But I'll keep you updated on that.
I mean, if you make enough plays, you can win a game. Speaking of making plays, there's going to be a lot of made plays in this game that is coming up also at 7:30 on Saturday. This is the game probably everybody will be watching, because this is actually available on television. I believe this is
not
the
on the cock.
game. No, it is not on the cock. Sadly, this game should be.
This game just isn't premium enough for the cock.
That is true. This game honestly probably should be behind paywalls with how good this is going to be. Most likely, who knows? It is Georgia, a 2.5-point favorite, traveling to Tuscaloosa to face off against the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama is an underdog for the first time at home since 2007. That seems like a fake number, but it's real. The over-under is 48.5. Jay Walsh, we'll start with you. I mean, it doesn't get bigger than this for September conference games, I feel. I mean, this is number 2 versus number 4. For Kalen DeBoer, this is his first real test as an Alabama head coach.
Yes. I mean, obviously, we joke about the premium games being on the cock, but obviously this is the game that everybody is looking forward to this week. I mean, it's probably at least over the last decade, probably the 2 premier teams in the country facing off against each other. And it's very strange how SEC scheduling works, because this is the first time these 2 teams are facing each other in the regular season since 2015. that doesn't seem like it should be a thing in a power conference, that you can go 9 years without playing one of your conference opponents, but that's a topic for a different discussion. And yes, I do. Yep, go ahead, Nick Burt.
It is the first game that actually has like fans there since
Yes,
2015 because they played the COVID year.
Yeah, as you raised your hand, I remembered the COVID year, but as many of my Michigan fan friends do, we let's forget about the COVID year, forget that ever existed. So but yeah, I mean it doesn't seem like it should be allowed to not play your conference opponents that often, but that's a different topic. But this game, obviously, everyone's been looking forward to it all year since it was announced. Georgia, both teams obviously have the level of talent to win this game. So the thing that I'm looking at going into this game is this is going to be a battle of coaching, because obviously both of these teams coming off of bye weeks heading into this game, they've had an extra week of scouting. They've had an extra week of prep time. Both of these teams are gearing up to play their best football in this game. So what I'm looking at here is pitting Kirby Smart's preparation versus Kalen DeBoer's. And with all due respect to Kalen DeBoer, he's a great coach. He has a great record against ranked teams. Kirby Smart's on a special path. I mean, he's on the trajectory to be among the great coaches in college football history. I'm picking Kirby. I'm riding with Georgia in this game. Like I said, absolutely no disrespect whatsoever to Kalen DeBoer, but it's hard for me to pick against Kirby Smart with a bye week. And I think Georgia goes into Tuscaloosa and rolls over in this game. And I would probably go with the under for 48.5, because I think that's kind of a weird line, but I'm rolling with the dogs in this one.
Jay, I mean, this is just going to be a monumental matchup. And I mean, like Jay Welsh said, it feels like Kirby is on a special path right now. I mean, this team they just seem very much built different right now. And another big factor for Georgia, doesn't seem like they've had any major rests since their last game. So they should be at like a full squad this week.
Right. Yeah. I mean, especially, coming off that Kentucky game a couple weeks ago, Georgia's out for blood, especially after that game last year. The way Georgia's season ended against Bama, they didn't even make the playoff after the SEC championship. Nick Saban's gone. This is Kirby's time. He's the best coach in America now. He's out to prove something again. And even though he has 2 titles in the last 3 years, they're still out for blood, and Georgia's ready to make another statement here. I am going with the dogs as well. I think at Tuscaloosa is really, really tough. Kalen DeBoer is a great head coach, but like you said, Jay Walsh, I agree with you. It's all comes down to preparation. And Kirby, I mean, like you said, no disrespect to Kalen DeBoer, what he's done in his coaching career has been special so far. But Kirby is just the top guy, and what I'm expecting is I could see Bama win this game if Milroe makes enough plays in the passing game, because he played really well against Wisconsin. I mean, Wisconsin's not great, but I think some people on this pod are not big Jalen Milroe fans, and including myself, and he made some very good throws against Wisconsin. If he can continue to do that against this really, really good Georgia defense, Bama's winning this football game. I just don't see it right now, just because Georgia's defense is just still incredibly elite. Ton of NFL players on that defense. I am leaning with the dogs here at Tuscaloosa. It's going to be a great game. I will be following along when MSU is getting their doors blown off. So I am excited. So yeah, give me the dogs.
And I don't mean to cut you off here, Nick, but I do just want to clarify with JDC. What you're saying is if Jalen Milroe makes plays, Alabama can do it.
He's going to make plays, and he's going to make so many plays. Yeah. So.
No, and Jay, you'll be following that game on the Fly Lansing out-of-town scoreboard when they show that one time during the game.
Okay, yeah, the one time they show it, and the no disrespect to the great people that I know working in that control room, but you got to have the scores updated people. I mean, oh my goodness. There's been so many times where I've just seen a score and I check my phone and it's like 2 quarters ahead. Like, can we get it together, please? No disrespect to the Spartan Vision people in there. I love them, but like, can we got to get it together for this game, especially.
And no disrespect to the on-field product in that game, in the Michigan State game, but if it gets a little out of hand, I think a decent strategy to keep people at that game would be to have a simulcast on one of the big screens.
Yes.
With the Alabama-Georgia game going on.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
that's just a little idea from me.
Yeah, you got the big jumbotron and then the 2 small ones. Get a little Georgia Alabama on the left or the right one, please. That'd be nice.
So while Jay Walsh was going into his thing about, the scheduling, which led me to the 2020 point, because I remembered that 2020 game and I went back to look at it really quick. I thought Jay left for a second. I was going to say.
I was charging I'm in the middle of charging my computer because it is about to die. So just bear with me here.
Sounds good. I'll ask Jay Walsh first before I give the answer. Do you know the last time Georgia went to Tuscaloosa and there was no like COVID or anything?
So I know that they have only played once, or obviously excluding the COVID year, they've only played each other once since like 2012. And that game was in Athens, so it was before 2012. I'm gonna say 2000. Did they play in 2009? The year? I don't know that Bama had started their Saban run by the last time they played. So I'm gonna say 2000. I'm gonna say 2007 because that was before they won their first Natty.
Jay, do you have a guess?
I'm going to go 2011. I mean, it's just crazy that these teams don't even play that much outside of the SEC championship. So I'm going to go 2011. I'm going to be honest, I have no clue.
The correct answer is 2007. That is it's a somewhat famous broadcasting moment, at least for me, because it's funny. It was Mike Patrick and Todd Blackledge on the call. And in the middle of overtime, it was Mike Patrick, he asks Blackledge, he says, I got an important question for you. What is Brittany doing with her life? And Todd has no idea who he's talking about. And he's like, Britney Spears. So random to ask that during overtime of an Alabama-Georgia game. But it's also funny that that's the last time that Georgia played in Tuscaloosa without any COVID or anything. So it does just go to show that the scheduling of the SEC is somewhat like just absolutely out there. Like I don't remember the team. I think it's Georgia. Even though A&M has joined the conference since 2012, they have not gone to College Station yet, which is just, it's insane. Absolutely insane. But
yeah.
We'll get back to this game really quick. I'll just throw in my quick 2 cents. I think this is going to be a real shock for Kalen DeBoer. I don't know if I know he's a great coach. I don't know if he's fully prepared for an SEC type schedule. And with your first game in the SEC being against Georgia, that is about as tough as you can get. I want to lean towards Alabama on this game, given that it's in Tuscaloosa. I just don't see how it happens. I think Georgia wins this game. I think it's probably by 7-10, honestly, because I don't know if Jalen Milroe can make those clutch plays. I don't know if he can do it because he just seems like when the lights get a little bit too bright, he kind of falters. I mean, we very much saw that in the Rose Bowl. I don't know how he is going to handle that. So given that, those were the 3 games we had on the card to preview this week. So we will get into our picks. But before we get into our picks, we will take a look at the gambling committee standings. Me and Jay Walsh came to a decision I think Jay will agree with it. Matt, he's not here. His internet died, so he can disagree whatever he wants. It's most likely going to be a 3-1 vote. But the way that the standings are going to break down, it's going to be by win percentage. I feel like that's the best way to do it. I see Jay, you're nodding your head. So that's an agreement from you. So that does shake up the standings a little bit coming into this week 5. I still sit at the top, 15-9. I'm 2-2 on locks, 62.5 win percentage. We have Justin Walsh moving up to second place. He is 13-12. He may be 1-3 on his locks, but he currently sits at a 52% win percentage. Matt drops down to third. He's 15-14, 2-2 on the locks. His win percentage is 51.7. So Jay Walsh, you barely get past Matt. And Jay, you're sitting in the basement. It feels like this may be the week, though, that you figure it out. You're 11-14, 2-2 on your locks. Your win percentage is 44. So given that, I will, of course, start out being at the top. I will give you my, of course, as always, 5-play parlay. First game, Ole Miss is hosting Kentucky at home. Ole Miss 17.5-point favorite. I like the Ole Miss Rebels in this one. Kentucky does worry me a little bit with this being, I believe this is the noon game. That is a little worrying. Ole Miss is just that much better, I think. They're going to most likely be a playoff team. If you saw the Lane Kiffin TikTok from this week with his daughter and her saying she wants to go to New York for her birthday in December, and then Lane actually thinking about it and saying, we're supposed to be in the playoffs. This is a playoff team. The Ole Miss Rebels, I have covering the 17.5. My favorite play of the week. It's not my lock, but it's my favorite play. UConn -6.5 against Buffalo at home. You may be asking, why is this my favorite play? Because I have discovered an insane stat that I don't believe is, well, it is true, but I just don't believe it that it's gone this long. This is the first time Buffalo is playing on grass in 5 years. The last time Buffalo played on grass was December 20th in the Bahamas Bowl against Charlotte. They won 31-9, and that was back in a pre-COVID era. Well, COVID was happening, in China at that point, but they haven't played a game on grass in 5 years. There's no way this team is going to be prepared to play on grass. They are turf merchants. Give me UConn in this one. Everybody's dying on the screen. I'm glad you guys enjoy that. My third play of this, I'll let Jay Walsh more talk to it because, spoiler alert, this is his lock of the week. Texas State, Sam Houston State, over 55.5. Love that play. That should be a high-scoring game. This is the line where I saw it at. There's been a lot of fluctuation given the news, but I'm taking Fresno State +1.5 at UNLV. We talked about UNLV earlier. That seems to be a disaster right now. And I'm going to do a Matt Merrifield special here with my last play, and this is going to be my lock. Give me Air Force -3.5 at Wyoming, just because Wyoming is god-awful. So that means, Jay Walsh, you will be up next, given that you are second in the standings.
It's wonderful to go this early in the picks rotation here. I don't think I've done it yet, so it's just a wonderful feeling. And by the way, I would just like to kind of start this off by saying I would like to thank you, Nick Burt, for giving us that piece of information on the UConn Buffalo game, because that may be the greatest stat I think I've ever heard in my life. And just the fact that we were able to communicate that to the people is just absolutely phenomenal. So I would like to thank you for that.
It is honestly my honor.
Yeah. For my first pick, I'm going to be kind of going along with your last pick in the fact that I'm going to be going with a service academy. I will be taking Army -11.5 at Temple. Temple has really struggled against the run this year. I mean, even in their their lone win this year. They gave up a lot of rushing yards, and obviously they played Navy already this year. Did not do well in that game. So I am rolling with Army. I'm rolling with West Point in this game. They are going to run all over Temple, even though it is at Temple. I'm rolling with the Cadets. So, and then my second pick, as you pointed out before, Texas State, Sam Houston State over 55.5. It would be irresponsible to not bet over 55.5 for this game. I mean, if you've paid attention to Texas State at all this year, they put up a lot of points, but they cannot stop anybody. I mean, they played an Arizona State team with a very mediocre offense and gave up 31 in that game. I mean, they're going to put up points and they're going to give up a lot of points. And Sam Houston State is definitely going to give up a lot of points. They have the capability to score as well. So I would be absolutely shocked if this game does not hit the over. So this is my lock of the week. I'm going to go with Georgia -2.5 at Alabama. As we already talked about, I'm rolling with the dogs in this one. Kirby Smart. My next pick, Michigan State +23.5 against Ohio State. Again, already kind of discussed this one. Rolling with Michigan State to cover in this game. And then my final pick, I'm going with Oklahoma getting 2.5 or favored by 2.5 at Auburn. Oklahoma obviously rolling out a new quarterback this week. Going with Michael Hawkins Jr. You never love to pick a team going on the road, debuting a new quarterback, but that's just how bad this Auburn team is. I mean, Peyton Thorne has been god-awful this year. Shout out Michigan State single-season touchdown touchdown record holder, Peyton Thorne. He has been god-awful this year for Auburn, and he still looks like the best quarterback on their roster. I mean, they are in a terrible spot with that team. I don't see how Oklahoma doesn't win this game. I think you could put me in at quarterback and Oklahoma could still potentially win this game. So I am rolling with the Sooners, get favored by 2.5 over the Tigers.
Those are some great picks there. Like I said, I 100% agree with you on that Texas State, Sam Houston State game. The fact, I don't think you mentioned it, and I didn't mention it either. It's being played at NRG Stadium in Houston. The fact that place is most likely going to be 3/4 empty just gives even more reason for this game to just get insane points-wise. So I am stoked for that. Since Matt sits in third, I was sent his picks. So I will read them off. I have no reasoning whatsoever behind these, so we can make up our own reasoning if we want. I guess we can figure it out. But he's only gone with 5 plays this week. That is very drastic change from Matt. He's been dabbling in 6 and 7 the past few weeks. He's only got 5 this week. He starts out Indiana -6.5 versus Maryland. The SIG's got things rolling.
He's lighting the SIG.
They're a covering machine. I don't blame them.
I mean, I think they've covered every game this year. So
yeah. I believe so.
I mean, with the Maple Missile 2.0 at quarterback, how do you not pick him?
Future Saskatchewan Rough Rider, Curtis Rourke. His second play and his lock of the week is UCF -14.5 versus Colorado at the Bounce House. I'm assuming he would say Deion's a fraud. Colorado isn't good, all that kind of stuff. Seems like something Matt would say. Third pick is Georgia -2 at Alabama. I know he was in a discussion this afternoon with his father, Mike Merrifield. Mike thinks Alabama is going to cover this game and win it outright. Sorry, Mr. Merrifield, I don't agree with you. His fourth pick is Ohio State -24 at Michigan State. Matt is saying somewhere, Michigan State is going to make too many mistakes in this game and they'll lose. And then he goes with the Bo Nix play of Oregon -24 at UCLA, a game that kicks off at 11 p.m. I believe it was on Fox, which is just an insane time to kick off a
11?
Big Ten game. 11 p.m.
What? What are we? Are we Hawaii or something? That is late.
Yeah.
And I would just like to say, I think this game could be the one that finally kicks off Bo Nix's Heisman candidacy. So something to look for.
Hey, he's having fun. He's learned the offense. I'd be surprised if he's not a dark horse for the Heisman this year. Jay, we'll leave it to you. What are your plays for this week, and what's getting you out of the basement this week?
God, well, this is a big week for me. I need to get it going here. Last week was pathetic. Well, actually, week 2 was pathetic because I went 1-5. So we need to get it going here. I'm going to start off with Rutgers, a little Friday night action. I love this play, actually. Rutgers and Washington at Shai Stadium. Rutgers is laying 2.5. Washington has to travel across 3 time zones to go play this game on a Friday night. Yeah, I will be gladly taking Rutgers in this game. Rutgers just went to Blacksburg and basically dominated Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's pretty bad, but still, I mean, going on the road and doing that is pretty impressive. I will take Rutgers minus the 2.5 against a pretty bad Washington team that's traveling across the country for this game. So gladly give me the 2.5, or let me lay the 2.5 there. We're going to go to Utah versus Arizona. Utah's an 11.5 point favorite at night in Utah. I mean, look, they handled Oklahoma State last week in 100 degrees, and it felt like 140 on the field at Oklahoma State. I will be taking Utah minus the 11.5 at home. Cam Rising is going to be playing. Well, we don't know if he's going to be playing this game, but still, Utah's still a good enough football team to win this game and cover outright. Arizona, I mean, they're just not off to a good start this year. I mean, they got a lot of talent, but I think Utah can definitely cover that 11.5 at night. We're going to go to Texas Tech versus Cincinnati. This is in Texas. This is at Texas Tech at night. Guns up. It's minus 2.5. I will be taking Texas Tech minus the 2.5. They've been playing some better football recently. Got off to a little bit of a sluggish start, but they've been playing some solid football as of recently. So I will be taking the Red Raiders minus the 2.5. Shout out my boss, who is a Texas Tech alum. So I will be telling him my play tomorrow, and hopefully he can tail me. So take it for what that's worth. We're going to go to Kansas State versus Oklahoma State. This is a ranked matchup. This is going to be a pretty good game at the Little Apple in Manhattan. I will be taking Kansas State minus the 4.5. They got blitzed at BYU last week. That was a really tough one for them. They're going to be coming to this game pissed. I think Kansas State's still a very, very good football team. And Oklahoma State, their offensive line's bad. Ollie Gordon, the reason why he's struggling this year is also because of that offensive line, which has just been really bad. And you have to go to the Little Apple against Matt at Kansas State and try to run the football. It's going to be kind of tough. So I will be taking Kansas State minus the 4.5 in that game. And then we got to go to Air Force and Wyoming. I know, Nick, you said you had Wyoming Air Force minus the 3.5. I will be taking the under 34 in this game because when there's an under like that, or when there's an over-under like that, 34, you just keep going lower because you got Jay Johnson, the Wyoming offensive coordinator, and then you got Air Force, who loves to run the triple option, just can't score any points worth you-know-what. So I will be taking the under 34 in that game. So those are my 5 plays, Big 12 heavy, and then a Big 10 game. And then, of course, we got Air Force and Wyoming, and that game just overall is just going to be awful. So those are my 5 plays.
All right. So our locks of the week are UCF minus 14.5 versus Colorado, Texas State, Sam Houston State over 55.5, Air Force minus 3.5 at Wyoming, and Rutgers minus 2.5 versus Washington. Gentlemen, before we get out of here, let's make some quick predictions. Obviously, we have seen what the Pac-12 is becoming for 2026, but it seems that they need one more member to become an actual conference. So they currently sit at 7 with Oregon State and Washington State obviously being there. You have Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, San Diego State, and then the recent addition of Utah State just yesterday. Jay Walsh, we'll start with you. Who do you think is going to end up being the 8th team in the Pac-12?
This is a really interesting one because I think there are a number of teams that realistically could, but I think some of the most deserving teams to be added into this conference that would make sense geographically. Obviously, I know that doesn't really matter anymore. Shout out Cal, known Atlantic Coast School. But I think, honestly, bringing up teams from the FCS, I think would be a decent option. If you added the Dakota State schools to that conference, I think it wouldn't be it would not be a bad play. I obviously it's a tough thing to go from FCS to FBS play, but we've seen James Madison had a ton of success with it. So I think it's a move that could be advantageous for both sides. Obviously, I don't know that it's going to happen, but that I think would be a very good move for both sides, bringing in the Dakota State schools up to the FBS level and getting them into the Pac-12.
And Jay Walsh, another point if you bring up both of them, you sit at 9 then, which makes football scheduling much more easier because you can do an 8-team round robin and then you still have your 4 out-of-conference games. With 8, you're only playing 7 and things get wonky from there. So I feel like they may go down that 9-team route. I don't know if they actually want to do that, though. Jay, we'll go with you. Who do you think will be either, the last 1 or 2 teams to join the Pac-12?
Oh, man. Well, you were the one that texted us saying known Pac-12 school UConn would be added. I mean, hey, UConn could have a shot. I mean, for not for basketball, but for football, that would make a little sense because you have Stanford and Cal. I don't know. I would agree with Jay Walsh. I think the North Dakota and South Dakota State would make sense just because for football, I mean, they're both really, really good, and I think the additions of those teams would make the Pac-12 would make them better in general, just because both of those teams are really, really good for football and the FCS level. And I think they do pretty well at the Power 4 or whatever you want to call it level. They probably won't even be Power 4 or Power 5 anymore, but you know what I mean, at the Division 1 level. So I would probably agree with Jay Walsh. I think North Dakota and South Dakota State would be a solid addition. So I would probably lean with them. What about you?
I'm surprised UNLV hasn't happened yet. I know there were the questions of if UNLV goes, does Nevada have to follow with, laws in the state of Nevada? I don't know if that's been figured out yet. That could very much be the reason why UNLV is not joined, because that would make a lot of sense being, Vegas, large team or large city on the West Coast. But I think, Jay, you mentioned my text about UConn. As much as I would love to see it, I honestly, because from the sounds of it, it would be football only. I think that only happens if they get Gonzaga for basketball and all the other sports. I don't know if Gonzaga is willing to do that. I think they have it nice and comfortable in the West Coast Conference. I don't know if they truly want to go out there, even though I mean, that's not that tough of a basketball. I mean, it's tougher than the West Coast, but I mean, there's not much difference there talent-wise. Honestly, if I'm throwing a name out there right now that I wouldn't be surprised by, Jay Walsh, it's your Texas State Bobcats. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the Pac-12 wants to get TV markets to get a bigger payout for their TV contract that they still do not have. I would not be surprised if they dip into that Texas market with Texas State, given that the American Athletic Conference schools have said no, and they're committed for now, even though I think, 6 months from now, somebody will be leaving that conference to where I have no idea. But I wouldn't be surprised if Texas State's name got brought up. But if it had to be one school, it has to be UNLV. That one makes the most sense. But if laws don't make it happen, I think it probably should be Texas State.
What about sorry to interrupt. What about Tulane? because that's the New Orleans market. I know it doesn't make sense geographically, but all these schools are different now. Tulane's the New Orleans market. Pretty solid for football, not really basketball, but you know the deal. It's a big market team or school. Does that make sort of sense? What do you guys think?
They were one of the targets originally because the 4 targets from the American were UTSA, which is the San Antonio market, Tulane with the New Orleans market, Memphis with the obvious Memphis market, and USF, where you got Tampa. It would be stupid geographically, but if you're trying to get the biggest media deal you can, that was the way to go. And given that they've said no for now, I don't know. If you're going for money, it makes sense, but I don't know. What about you, Jay Walsh?
I agree. I did think about Tulane, and it's kind of what you guys said. My pick, obviously, the Dakota State schools is more focused on the football aspect rather than the monetary aspect, because you're getting all 3 people that live in both Dakotas to watch those games. But if you're looking for the money market, I think, like you guys said, Tulane or Texas State is definitely the play. Realistically, I don't necessarily know that it happens. I think a more likely route is to go with one of the New Mexico schools, actually. But again, you're not really bringing in a big time TV market there. So I think if TV market is the way to go for them and it's the way that they're focusing, I do think either Texas State or Tulane would make sense.
Yeah, it just seems like this is going to be a never-ending road, because once this does end up happening, next question is, what's the Mountain West going to do? Because, the Mountain West seems on thin ice right now, because if UNLV leaves for the Pac-12, Air Force is most likely leaving for the American to be joined with the other academy schools, which, again, geographically doesn't really make sense, but whatever. There's rumors about Hawaii possibly being on the move, trying to secure their future. The main one they're saying is the CUSA, which would be god awful if that happens.
Future Pac-12 team, Hawaii.
That's been mentioned too. The Pac-12 would kind of be stupid if they do that, but whatever. I feel like for the Pac-12, if you're calling Hawaii, you've got serious issues going on. And honestly, I don't think we're that far away right now from the Pac-12 having major issues. If they're really struggling this much to get an 8th team, that may be a big problem. So, gentlemen, I think we'll wrap it up. If you guys have any last words, feel free to mention them now.
Well, the White Sox are in extra innings right now, fighting for those who don't know, the worst record in MLB history is going on right now. They're tied 3-3 in the bottom of the 10th. Riveting stuff going on right now at the G Spot, Guaranteed Rate Field. So just a great game going on between the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim and then the White Sox. So just great stuff.
And I would like to take this time to point out that the gritty Detroit Tigers did once again win tonight. The magic number is down to 3 because the Twins unfortunately did also win tonight. They beat the Marlins. But and I don't know if anyone was paying attention. I mentioned this to Nick Burt before the show, but top pitching prospect in baseball, Jackson Jobe, made his MLB debut tonight and pitched a scoreless 9th inning to seal the game for the Detroit Tigers. So I just wanted to point that out and say that the Detroit Tigers are back and we are all in on the playoffs.
Well, gentlemen, that is going to wrap it up for today. Next week, given that we record on Wednesdays, we may be recording during a Tigers wildcard game, depending on how the schedule works out, because no matter what, game 2 of the wildcard will be on Wednesday, whether that be at 12 o'clock in the afternoon or 7 p.m. Who knows? For now, it seems like they're headed to Baltimore, which I think favors heavily for the Tigers. We'll see. But keep your eye on those Orioles because they got another win tonight as of Wednesday against the Yankees. The Yankees keep losing. Those Guardians are coming. Guardians are coming for that 1 seed to play the winner of that 4-5 potential game between most likely the Orioles and the Tigers. Who knows? Maybe the Tigers get swept by the god-awful White Sox. I just had to leave you on that, Jay Walsh, because I know we had that conversation earlier. So
White Sox just won. The streak is not, or the record is not broken yet.
They're winning out. The White Sox are winning out.
Oh my God! Imagine the storylines.
I said it before the show. I have run the scenario through my head so many times that the Tigers need 1 game in that White Sox series to clinch the playoffs, and they somehow get swept by the worst team in baseball history. It would be the most Detroit sports way to miss the playoffs. And I don't want to, but I'm mentally preparing myself for it to absolutely break my spirit.
We'll just leave it at that. We will leave it at that. We will wrap up this episode of the Merrifield Sportsbook Show without Merrifield, of course. He was here for 2 seconds. But, gentlemen, I think we did good holding down the fort. So thank you so much for joining today. Obviously, you join every week, but it's still great to have you in our presence here at the Merrifield Sportsbook. So thank you so much for watching. If you just stumbled across the Merrifield Sportsbook Show, we do this every week. So make sure you like and subscribe to this. By the time this comes out on Friday, Tottenham will have already played in the Europa League. So there will be a Europa League recap on top of the perch from me. Hopefully we win that game against Azerbaijani side. Qarabag, if they don't, that's a big problem. You may hear me saying make plays a lot. I may have a hoarse voice like Mike Villani in that top of the perch. Who knows? Hopefully it's just a 5-0 victory and we can smooth sail through that. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you again soon for another episode of the Merrifield Sportsbook Show.